Okay, here are the last two problems on the review. I've gone ahead and prepared these proofs just to help talk you through them. These shouldn't take too long, just so you can get a better explanation of how these actually work. This is number 30. Here's what we are given. We are given that h is the midpoint of ek and fj. That's going to tell me a couple things. That given tells me several different things. First of all, if h is the midpoint, then EH and HK are congruent. But it's the midpoint of this other segment, so JH and HF are congruent. So when we start working through our proof, we see this. H is the midpoint of EK and FJ. That's given to you. Okay? And then like we said, since h is the midpoint, by the definition of what a midpoint is, sorry, that should be definition of a midpoint. I can fix that. There we go. By definition of a midpoint, we can say EH and HK are congruent, and FH and HJ are congruent. So there's two pairs of congruent sides, EH and HK, FH and HJ. We need more information to prove that the triangles are congruent first, then we can prove these are congruent by CP/CTC. So here's what we can look at. Whenever you have intersecting lines, we always get vertical angles, so I always will know these are congruent angles by the vertical angles theorem. So angle EHF is congruent to angle JHK by that wrong reason, sorry about that, by the vertical angles theorem. And that's our pair of congruent angles, which those angles are the included angles between the sides that we already said were congruent in step 2. So the triangles are congruent by side angle side. Since the triangles are congruent, their corresponding parts are congruent by CP/CTC. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the next proof, the last one. It's number 31, even though it doesn't have the number with it. Here's what we are given. We're given that NP bisects angle MNO, and NP is perpendicular to MO. Since we have an angle bisector, that creates congruent angles here and here. Those are angles MNP and angle ONP. All right, so if we start with this given, I'm going to put all the givens in one here. We have NP bisects angle MNO, and NP is perpendicular to MO. Those are the givens. This angle bisector is going to tell me my next statement before I move on to talk about this one. An angle bisector will always tell you a pair of congruent angles. In this case, MNP and ONP. And that's just by definition of angle bisector. And then this other given, perpendicular lines, tells me that we have right angles here and here. We have right angles, MPN and OPN. By definition of perpendicular lines. And then, as you can see, because we have these right angles, the right angle congruence theorem is going to tell me that those two angles that are right angles are also congruent. So there's another pair of congruent angles, MPN and OPN. So there are congruent angles here and here at the top of segment NP, and here at the bottom of segment NP. But segment NP is a shared side by both triangles, so it is congruent to itself by the reflexive property. So we have angles here and here that are congruent. The included sides are congruent, and then other angles here and here are congruent. So the triangles are congruent by angle side angle. And since the triangles are congruent, segment MN is congruent to segment NO by CP/CTC. Hopefully this has been a little bit more helpful in looking at these proofs. Remember that your test is on block day this week for hours 1 and 5. That's Wednesday. For hour 2, that is Thursday. Make sure that you use the attached homework key to grade your assignment for this review and bring that ready to turn in on the day of the test. Don't forget to get a parent signature for extra credit. Thank you and good luck.